right. Hello, everyone. It is Monday Junior, or I can't remember how to call it, but all day long I keep thinking it has to be Monday, but it's not. So I hope everyone had a great break yesterday if you took some time off for Labor Day. I'm Carrie Howell, the CEO for American Migraine Foundation, and joining me is my colleague, Lindsey Santos. Lindsey, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Well, for those who have not joined sort of this series, Lindsey and I were talking about I guess a month ago, what do we really want to focus on in this month? And really her background in being an educator for how many years, Lindsey?
24.
24 years. You started when you were what, like 15, I think. So
Right,
uh,
right. Thank you for that.
yes, absolutely. But her being an educator for so many years, we talked about how her as a patient, how important it was for her to bring the perspective of the patient, an educator working in the classroom with kids who also have migraine, and then also just her experience as a teacher with migraine. And so we thought, let's talk about school being back in session. And we're specifically talking about school grade. Not We're not really focused on college age right now, only because we're talking about like what the schools can do for you. Colleges could do stuff as well, but we'll
Mm,
address that separately. Um, but Lindsey, can you just tell people real quickly, in case they haven't seen the other series,
mm,
how long ago you were diagnosed as a patient and why you're so passionate, I think, about migraine in the classroom?
mm. I was diagnosed over 30 years ago, right when I was 5, right? Um, no.
Exactly, exactly.
But it's been a long journey for me. I've definitely seen the difference from being episodic, where I only had a few, to then chronic. And just I've really see how debilitating this disease can be. And also, it took me a while to find my voice. So when I think about kids, and especially as a teacher, that's one of my goals, has always been a goal, is to give students a voice. And sometimes you have to teach that a little bit and encourage that, but just knowing that there are things we can do in the classroom and that not a lot of people really know. And so I think, in my individual school, I had lots of conversations with teachers, but that just isn't always available. So I think that's why I'm so passionate, is sometimes you have to be the advocate for your child, and that can be life-changing for you and your child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're dealing with the stigma in general,
Mm,
and we don't think about it. I would say, not having a child with migraine, I would not have thought about probably pushing for this in my child's school. But this is really important that a
mhm,
parent raises their hand, and it also teaches about stigma, right? That hey, this is
mhm.
not just a headache. We say it ad
All the
nauseum.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But I think there's still this helps advocate for what that this is more than that.
Mhm.
So what are some things parents can do to support their child with migraine?
I've talked with some parents, and some things that I think they've used and that have been helpful. You can actually get a blue light screen cover for your computer. So in the world we live in, kids are on screens a lot, even at school. So that could be something that could help them, because screens can be hard. You could also send in blue light glasses or even migraine glasses. And so these are some conversations I've had, not only with my local school, but just other parents through different things. And
Lindsay,
so
do you have
just
to get
know
those from a doctor, or can you just buy those anywhere?
you can just buy them anywhere. Most
Okay.
likely, you're going to find it on Amazon. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be Amazon,
Yeah.
but they're accessible. You don't need a prescription. There's not just one place to get them, and so it gives you some choice as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Especially with our kids using Chromebooks and
All the
constantly in front of
time.
their devices. So let's say a parent is not getting the support they need, or they're sending these supports and they're not still not
Mhm.
helping their kiddo. What what are the next steps?
I think I would start with the teacher, because if you haven't really had a conversation about it and the student's just bringing these things in, the teacher just might not know. And if they don't have migraine or they haven't been experienced to someone who, really does, then they just kind of need to be a little educated. And that could be helpful, having that conversation of why I'm bringing these things in, but my student is still struggling. And so the teacher could say, wow, I just didn't really realize that that was so impactful. And so that's something to kind of talk with the teacher about. And then there are things that that teacher can do also that don't have to be in a typed plan. We do things for kids all the time. We give them preferential seating, we repeat directions, sometimes many, many times. And so, you know, maybe your child needs breaks from the screen. Maybe they need to look away from the screen. And those things we can talk about how to get that in place if the teacher is not able to do that independently. So I would strongly encourage to start with the teacher and see what you're able to get through.
I know for myself, I pick my battles of what questions to ask teachers because I'm like, oh, I don't want to annoy them, but can I ask this question? If a parent has that nature and they're like, oh, I feel like I'm bothering the teacher. I really hate to ask again, but she didn't move little Johnny, or he needs to not
Mm.
sit next to the light. Is it? I mean, I know you're speaking on behalf of all teachers in America. No, I know that's hard to ask, but is it okay to kind of push again if the teacher hadn't responded in a week? Or I mean, I know some of the schools just started back, but is
Mhm.
is that something? Is it okay to kind of keep pushing if you don't get a response?
Absolutely. And I don't think it's not a big deal to ask the teacher again, but you may need to dig a little bit further. You've got the school nurse can be really helpful to you, the school counselor can be helpful, and your doctor can be helpful. So, getting that documentation and maybe the doctor even saying these things could help could be another step if it just isn't naturally happening with the teacher.
Yeah,
Every child's going to be a different level of severity. For one child, it might not be they just needed that blue screen, protector. But for
yeah,
somebody else, may need much more.
yeah, absolutely. And talk a little bit about that much more. You and I talked a little bit that what can a parent do if they're still not getting what they need? Talk a little bit about the next level that you have to go to make sure your kiddos being advocated for.
If it's not happening, organically, it's not getting done even after you've spoken to staff, I would make sure that you have that documentation from your doctor. And then as a parent, you can actually request a 504 meeting. And that 504 can put some of these things in place where they are required to allow your child to use these things. It could be that in this document, it has a list of accommodations, and one of those might be taking breaks from the screen, additional time to complete assignments, or it could even be an alternate way to turn in the assignment. If screens are really hard, we can do some things to provide breaks. So maybe your child does it on pencil and paper. There's just so many little things that can be done, and sometimes people don't think about them. So having that there, and that will live with your child. If you start that in elementary, you meet typically once a year on that. And then that can continue on even to middle school when they've got, even more on their plates.
And for those who have no idea what a 504 is, because maybe this is their first kiddo, maybe
Mhm.
they've had other kiddos who didn't need a 504. Can you just tell people a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes they get confused with an IEP. So, an IEP is an individualized education where your child is definitely getting accommodations. They may need support with a specific subject. And so that's when they leave the room and they go get that extra teaching. But a 504 is different, and it helps if there is another health issue, if there's something that's impairing their learning. And so we're seeing this gap in their success. And so a common one for people to have a 504 4 would be ADHD. I was at so many meetings for that. So migraine is definitely something, and I think it is recently more accepted. That stigma is there, but I think it's getting better to where if you really think your child needs these accommodations, I would definitely reach out. And you could probably start with your school counselor or even the teacher and say, I want to request this. And they will navigate that for you.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's fantastic, and people may not even think have about doing that. And I know
Mhm.
there's the fear of like, little Bobby is going to take advantage of this. He's going to,
Mhm.
especially if he's maybe he has ADHD and has migraine, and they may think, oh, he'll take advantage and ask to do his test in a low lit area or whatever. What's your response to that? If there's somebody whose kid is not the they could be the little troublemaker at times, not because they're ADHD. Please don't text me. I'm very, very familiar with ADHD. But what do you do if someone's like, oh, I'm afraid he'll take advantage and he'll ask to take his test down the hall in a quieter room all the time or in a low lit room?
Mm.
Um, what
I
are
would
your thoughts on
still
parenting that? Yeah.
I would still encourage you to provide those modifications. And, the thing is kids also do want to be in their classroom. They want to be with their friends. And so I really don't think it would be something that they would truly take advantage of, and if at some point you feel like they are, then I would just talk with your child because
Yes.
they can understand, gosh, I really need to ask for this at the right time. But we
Yes.
give accommodations to kids all the time. So there should be no difference than this.
Yeah, one more amazing things that our teachers do.
Yeah.
I can imagine a classroom. You have a classroom of kids, and teachers are just absolutely mind blowing to me how amazing they are. I think that's fantastic, and I don't know that a lot of people who may have a child recently diagnosed would have thought of a 504, but I
Mhm.
know I'm a big fan of those too. When kiddos need it and need to really have that individualized. I mean, gosh, you talked a little bit in our last time about where you brought in lamps. Talk a little bit more about what other things as a teacher um, did you do to help students with migraine?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, in schools, I've never been in a school that didn't have those horrendous fluorescent lights, and
Yes.
those can be such a trigger. So, for me, creating that calmer environment in my classroom stemmed from not using those lights and solely using lamps or natural light. And what I actually found in doing that is it really did help students with migraine, but that the other students who didn't have migraine actually liked the calm and liked, because it just provided the right. And I even had kids come back and say, I really felt at home in the classroom. I really felt like it was our relaxing play, and we did a lot of learning. But so I think just there's so many things. And then after I had students leave and go to the next grade, I checked in with those teachers and I had, I think, at least two of them that went from lights to lamps. And so that was two wins for them at that time. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I mentioned I had kits for them with an ice pack and a snack, water, just anything that could be helpful for them in the classroom. And then just understanding as a teacher, they just may need to go to the nurse. They may need to have that eye mask on and just rest. So,
Yeah.
or
I
take
I
some medicine.
100%, Lindsay. And I think one of the things too is that we as an organization want people to be aware that this is when we say it's more than a headache, that's not because we're saying, oh, there's so much going on as well. We want people
Mhm.
to know it's not just the head pain that's traditionally known as migraine. It's nausea. We know there's blurry vision. There's all kinds of symptomology with this. And you may think, well, he didn't seem like he had a headache today in school, but there's all this big list that I share all the time with people saying there are so many more symptoms. And so I think too, parents arming themselves with those symptoms and knowing those are present, like, oh, wow, I didn't think this was part of migraine.
Mm,
Is so important too. So I want to make sure people know on our website, we have so many resources, and those
mhm,
are great to take to your schools if they're not as familiar. If you're having, maybe you can't get into a doctor, or maybe you don't have a doctor, you can just say, hey, could you write something for the school? And maybe the school says, hey, help me understand. I never thought this was a big deal. It's migraine.
mhm,
And take on some of the resources we have. We want to empower you all to advocate for yourself, for your child, however, whatever your place is in the journey of migraine. So, Lindsay, any last words or any words of encouragement for parents who may watch this?
I think I had some parents that were worried that their child just wouldn't be as successful at school because they were carrying migraine. And I love that word that you use, empowered. That's something, if we empower your student and your child, I would just say, just see them as being successful as anyone else as long as they have some supports in place. And that we have so many different kids with so many different conditions that I think it's just more acceptable, and this one does have some stigma, but we're making headway. So I would just encourage you to expect the same out of your child, and they just need a little support.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep using, keep putting this verbiage out to people. And as a parent,
Mhm.
advocating for your child. Let us know if there are resources you're not finding on our page. We may be able to direct you to someone else or another org, or we may write something if there's something missing. But that's what we want to do, is we want to empower you as a parent. We want to empower all patients living with migraine. So Lindsey, thank you so much. Thank you for your passion for this. Thank you to the parents who may take, or caregivers or loved ones watching this, to go, oh, if you've got questions, let us know, or comment in the chat, because it's always great to have a discussion going and learn from each other too. So Lindsey, thank you for joining us. Looking forward to continue this discussion this month. And to anyone else, if you've got questions or comments, or you want to email us, you can always email info@americanmigrainefoundation.org. Lindsey, thank you. Have a great day, rest of your day. And again, happy Tuesday.
That's right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.